Hi everyone, quick note before we get into it. These videos were made over the course of the 2024-2025 football season, and you'll probably see our video production and writing skills improve in real time over the course of the video. While we have redubbed the videos with a real person, the scripts and videos will be largely unchanged. So please be a little merciful with the early episodes as we were still finding our footing and learning the power of the tools we had at our disposal. Thanks, and now on to the video. Football. No, I said football. There we go. That is football. It's about as American as apple pie and driving everywhere. And you can't have a football game without one of the 30 iconic stadiums spread across the United States. And as urban planners and football fans, we wanted to go stadium by stadium to evaluate and rank the quality of the urban planning around them. To be clear, we are grading these stadiums not on our views of the teams, the records, or the quality of the stadiums as buildings. Rather, we are evaluating them based on how they fit into the wider urban fabric of the community and region around them. Is there a good mix of land uses? Or is it just a sea of parking? Can you get to the stadium by walking, biking, or transit? Or are you forced to drive? Is it located close to the center of town? Or is it isolated far away? Let's get ready to watch some concussion-causing goodness as we kick off for some NFL Urbanism!
Stoppers! Stoppers!
Built in 1927, Soldier Field is the oldest stadium in the NFL. So, how's its urbanism? The stadium has excellent access to a metro line, Chicago's regional train service. It also has great access to a frequent bus line, which connects the stadium to the subway system, but the station itself is a bit removed from the stadium. This separation is made painful by patchy walkability at Columbus and Lakeshore Drive. This lack of pedestrian connections somewhat undermines the otherwise excellent location of the stadium. It is close to the heart of the downtown, and the surrounding land uses are quite good, with parks, museums, and minimal surface parking, keeping the stadium area active year-round. So while it could use some improvements to better tie it into the wider city, Soldier Field overall earns a solid A for its urbanism. Built in 1957, Lambeau Field is the second largest stadium in the NFL. So, how's its urbanism? The stadium is located in a low-density residential neighborhood, a bit removed from the city center, though it's connected with the rest of Green Bay's street grid. While it's not surrounded by an ocean of parking, most of the nearby buildings have their own parking lakes. As such, it only gets a mid-grade in terms of walkability and year-round activation. In terms of transportation, the score isn't great. While there are 2 bus lines which service the stadium, they come very infrequently and offer little service to the wider region. These urbanist weaknesses are present throughout Green Bay. With a few changes, like increasing the frequency and reach of the buses, and allowing for gentle density and mix of land uses, both the stadium and city's urbanism could be improved. Much of this can be seen across from the stadium at the Title Town development. As it stands, Lambeau Field merits a B- for its urbanism. Not awful, but room for improvement.
Are you ready for it?
Built in 1972, Arrowhead Stadium holds the record for the loudest stadium in the NFL. So, how's its urbanism? The stadium is located several miles from the center of the city and is physically cut off from the city by 2 highways. If that wasn't bad enough, it sits in the center of an ocean of parking large enough to fit the stadium at least 8 times over. Aside from the adjacent baseball stadium, it has no other land uses. In terms of transportation, it doesn't fare any better. The stadium is served by a single, infrequent bus line, which drops you off outside the parking lots. This is a big problem because, did we mention, there are no sidewalks or pedestrian paths connecting the parking lots to the street. In other words, it is transit poor and unwalkable. Your only option to reach the stadium is to drive. Due to its isolation, fixing these issues in the present location is likely not worth the trouble. In theory, it could serve as the nucleus of a new town center style development, but it would likely be cheaper and have a greater benefit to the city as a whole if it were just relocated entirely to somewhere closer to the city center. This stadium fails on every metric of urbanism. Arrowhead Stadium receives a massive F. Just scrap it and start from scratch. Built in 1975, the Superdome is the largest fixed dome structure on Earth. So, how's its urbanism? The stadium sits within the heart of the city. Unlike many stadiums, it is not surrounded by an ocean of parking. Rather, the stadium has opted to put their parking under the stadium in garage structures. The stadium is surrounded instead by a variety of mixed-use buildings and is very close to City Hall, so the area has great potential for year-round activation. Though the stadium is well connected with an overall fairly walkable street grid, improvements could be made. The biggest issues are the two highways, which cut the downtown and stadium off from the rest of the city. Since these are elevated roads, a few modifications to make the spaces less off-putting to pedestrians, like wider sidewalks, park spaces, and better lighting, might somewhat mitigate their impact on walkability. In terms of transit access, the Superdome is located just blocks away from the hub of most of the city's bus and streetcar network. As such, it is accessible from just about anywhere in the city by transit, though frequencies could be improved on most routes. The stadium is also very close to the Amtrak station. While this does not currently do much, if frequent local train services were added, this station would serve as a major asset for the stadium's urbanist credentials on a regional scale. Overall, the Superdome earns a solid A for its urbanism. Well done, Cher.
Miami has the Dolphins, the greatest football team.
Built in 1987, Hard Rock Stadium was the first multi-purpose stadium in the United States to be fully privately funded. So, how's its urbanism? The stadium is technically not within the confines of Miami. Instead, it's in the midst of the suburban sprawl of Miami Gardens, a neighboring municipality. Though somewhat connected with the wider regional street grid, the stadium's location and the suburban sprawl-style land uses around it, including extremely wide stroads and other physical barriers, greatly harm walkability. Unlike many stadiums with parking oceans, this stadium has interesting ways to make its parking lots multi-use. These include pop-up tennis courts and an entire racetrack with seating for both set up in the parking lot as needed. This means that what could have cost the venue points winds up actually earning it a few, as it allows for a consistent, if unorthodox, activation of the space. The stadium has 2 bus lines serving it, though their frequencies are low. For events, the stadium operates a shuttle bus between it and the Aventura Brightline train station about 25 minutes away. Improvements could be made by converting 2 of the many existing lanes into dedicated transit lanes for a BRT or light rail line. Upzoning these corridors to promote gradual redevelopment while taking another 2 lanes to extend the sidewalks and add bike lanes would further improve the urbanism of the stadium and the Miami region. Hard Rock Stadium gets a very low C- for its urbanism. A unique foundation with lots of room for improvement. Built in 1995, Everbank Stadium is slated for a $1 billion rebuild over the next few years. We will thus try to evaluate both its current and planned contexts. So, how's the urbanism? The stadium is located close to the downtown and is connected with the street grid. While improvements could be made to its walkability, it's not awful. Its land use is a bit of a mixed bag. While it does have a fair bit of parking around it, it is also next to 2 other stadiums, which helps to create a steady baseline of activity. The rebuild plan calls for the expansion of nearby parks and might include new mixed-use developments, but these plans are not definite. Its transportation is complex. The stadium is served by one infrequent bus line, but the stadium also has a unique system where it shuttles people from parking lots across the region to and from the stadium on game days. This park and ride model is a fairly effective way to manage traffic, but it doesn't do much to reduce car dependence. In the coming years, the city has plans for the Ultimate Urban Circulator, an AV shuttle system which will replace and expand the existing Skyway in some form. Whether this will be effective transit or a gadget bond remains to be seen. In its present form, Everbank Stadium gets a solid C for its urbanism. If its future plans live up to the hype, this could be raised to a B or higher. We'll see what happens. Built in 1996, Bank of America Stadium was the first to be financed using a personal seating license. So, how's the urbanism? The stadium is located right in the heart of Uptown and is fairly well connected with the city street grid, so it scores very well on walkability. Its only demerit is the adjacent highway, which cuts the city in half. Around the stadium are a good mix of land uses, including parks, apartments, museums, hotels, retail, dining, and another stadium. These were built as infill development on the many parking lots which once dominated Charlotte. Its transportation is nearly ideal. With the stadium sitting less than a mile from the hub of the local transit system, including 2 light rail lines, it is accessible by transit from nearly anywhere in the region. If the nearby Gateway station were to be finished, this would include intercity transit links. Bank of America Stadium receives a solid A for its urbanism.
I'm telling you, I love being happy after football. It's such a nice surprise.
Built in 1997, Northwest Stadium is often ranked as one of the worst stadiums in the NFL. But how's its urbanism? Not only is the stadium not located close to the city center, it's not even in the District of Columbia. Rather, it's located far in the Maryland suburb of Landover. While unlike Arrowhead Stadium, it does have pedestrian pathways linking it to the region, its extremely isolated location makes walking there from just about anywhere impractical, if not impossible. The only land use around it is an ocean of parking, large enough to fit the entire stadium, more than 6 times over. Unless there's a game or event at the stadium, there is no other activation of the space. The only thing which saves the stadium from a failing grade is the high-frequency metro station located a mile away. While on paper, this shouldn't be considered walking distance to the stadium, every game day, thousands of fans take the train and walk from the station to the stadium. The sheer volume of foot traffic transforms what might otherwise be an unwalkable mile into a brisk 15-minute walk. There are several options which could improve the urbanism of the stadium. It could either become the hub of a new, dense town center neighborhood via infill development, or it could be demolished and relocated closer to a population center. There is actually currently a plan to return the stadium to DC. Based on the current plans for the site, there is a lot to like about the urban planning being proposed. If completed in this form, the new stadium would likely earn an A or better from us. These plans are, however, currently tangled in both local and federal politics, so we will be tracking this story with interest. Presently, Northwest Stadium merits a D for its urbanism. Not the worst, but still really bad. Built in 1998, Raymond James Stadium is the first NFL stadium to have its team win the Super Bowl at home. So, how's its urbanism? The stadium resides within a low-density residential neighborhood in Tampa, and is thus well connected with the city street grid. Its theoretical walkability is good, but this is undermined somewhat by the design of the streets and land uses. The roads are overly wide. While they do have bike lanes, these are only painted on, with no physical protection. While the stadium is technically surrounded by an ocean of parking, the lots are not asphalt, but grass fields. This is not only better for the environment, but potentially improves the urbanism of the area if these lots can double as public parks. Other than this though, the land use is not ideal. The residential uses have very low density, and all development follows a suburban strip mall style. On balance, this means that the land use grades poorly. The stadium is served by 4 bus lines, though direct downtown connections and frequencies need to be improved. However, many of these lines do not operate during games. The urbanism could be improved by adding in protected bike lanes and a BRT system to the roads. and by promoting infill mixed-use development on nearby parking lots. As is, Raymond James Stadium gets a C- for its urbanism. There is a lot of potential here, if only they can seize it.
Quoth the Raven.
Nevermore.
Why, you little...
Built in 1998, M&T Bank Stadium has been ranked by fans as one of the best stadiums in the NFL. But how's its urbanism? The stadium is in the Pigtown neighborhood, close to downtown. Despite nearby highways, it's well connected to the city street grid and scores very well in walkability. The highlight is the Ravens Walk, a pedestrian route to the heart of downtown, which helps put the Baltimore subway within a 15-minute walk of the stadium. A light rail station with minimal acceptable frequency sits right next to the stadium. It's also served directly by one low-frequency bus line, but a few blocks away, several other bus lines are accessible to the stadium. The two biggest transportation issues the stadium has are that the nearby Camden Mark line, Maryland's regional train service, doesn't operate on Sundays, and that the stadium lacks east-west transit links. The stadium's surrounding land uses are what hurt it most. Though a few blocks away are a mix of residential, commercial, and cultural uses, the immediate adjacent blocks are parking lots and warehouses. This dead zone of spatial activation around the stadium could be addressed with infill development and redevelopment of the warehouses. Ravens Stadium earns a strong A- for its urbanism. With only a few changes, it could easily reach A or A+ territory.
This building's no longer haunted by sadness.
It could be worse, though. At least we're not Detroit.
Built in 1999, Huntington Bank Field is the only stadium in the NFL to have never hosted a postseason game. So, how's its urbanism? The stadium is in Cleveland's downtown, on the shores of Lake Erie, but is mostly cut off from the city by a rail yard and highway. The only way across this canyon is a few bridges, though these do have wide pedestrian areas, so the walkability is a mixed bag. Its transportation is interesting. The adjacent Waterline light rail line doesn't normally run on weekends, but it does operate during games at the stadium. Further, while the stadium is not directly served by a bus line, it's less than a mile away from the hub of the regional transit system. This means that the stadium is actually very transit accessible, though frequencies could be improved. The land use around the stadium is complicated. To the east of the stadium are museums and parks, which enable year-round activation. To the north is a parking lot. To the west is the Port of Cleveland, which hurts spatial activation, but is a vital part of the economy, so any changes must be strategic. Improvements could be made by running the light rail line every day, improving pedestrian connections, upgrading the nearby Amtrak station while starting a regional rail service, and with infill development on the parking lots north of the stadium and south of the highway. As is, Brown Stadium earns a B for its urbanism.
Still not Detroit.
Built in 1999, Nissan Stadium is reaching the end of its life and will soon be replaced by a new stadium on the adjacent lot. So, setting aside the new stadium for a moment, how's the urbanism of the current one? The stadium is located across the Cumberland River from downtown Nashville. The two banks are connected by both pedestrian and vehicular bridges. The biggest drag on its walkability is the Ring Road Highway, which largely cuts it and the downtown off from the rest of the region. The stadium is served by 4 bus lines, though their frequencies leave much to be desired. On the west bank of the river is the terminus for the We Go Star, Nashville's regional train service. The pedestrian bridge places this within a 15-minute walk of the stadium, and this should boost the urbanism score. However, the train does not operate on Sundays, and does not operate late enough on Mondays and Thursdays for it to be of much use to the stadium. As such, it has no impact on the stadium's urbanism. The stadium sits in an ocean of parking. To the east and west of the lots are industrial spaces. Taken together, apart from a juvenile courthouse, the land use leaves a lot to be desired. Rising next to the stadium is its $2 billion successor. What is intriguing about the new stadium from an urbanism lens is that its plans seem to include infill development to convert all the adjacent parking lots into parks and mixed-use buildings. This would address almost all the current issues with land use and make the stadium the anchor of an extension of the downtown. The present configuration of the stadium merits a C+ for its urbanism. However, the new layout would quickly elevate the stadium all the way up to a B. If the train were to extend its hours and days of operation, bus frequencies were improved, and highways capped or removed, this could bring the stadium up to an A or even A+. For now, we will maintain the C grade, but we will be watching with great interest to see if the new stadium delivers on its Titanic promises. Built in 2000, Paycor Stadium was the first NFL venue to win an AIA award. So, how's its urbanism? The stadium is in downtown Cincinnati on the banks of the Ohio River. It scores very well on walkability, as it has ample sidewalks with ground floor activations and several bridges across the adjacent highway, though fully capping this road would significantly improve things. The stadium is a 15-minute walk from the hub of the regional transit system. It is also served directly by 2 bus lines and is a few blocks away from the terminus of the circulator streetcar, which operates daily and runs late on game days. While frequencies could be improved across the board, this is a good, sorta grade. The land use around the stadium is extremely impressive. The stadium was set up for success as it was part of a multi-decade plan to revitalize the waterfront. Over the last 20 years, it has turned surface parking into underground garages with mixed-use buildings, museums, and parks on top of them. As such, it has consistent spatial activation year-round. Some improvements could be made by increasing transit frequencies and adding links into northern Kentucky, and by finishing the original master plan by capping over the highway and adding infill to the final lots. Paycor Stadium earns a solid A for its urbanism. It is a masterclass in how to pair an NFL stadium with good urbanism.
Let Yins know that there is a Pittsburgh Steelers fan on board the ISS.
Built in 2001, Acrisure Stadium was the first NFL stadium to host a women's football game. So, how's its urbanism? The stadium sits across the river from downtown. Though it is somewhat cut off from the adjoining neighborhoods by a highway, there are several bridges across the river and wide sidewalks under the highways, which help to overcome these barriers and give the area a solid walkability foundation. The stadium is also conveniently located just off of the Three Rivers Heritage Trail, so biking there is a breeze, with convenient racks installed right outside the stadium, courtesy of our friends at Bike Pittsburgh. The stadium is also served by 3 bus routes and 3 light rail lines, what Yinzers call the T, giving the downtown and many of the surrounding suburbs easy access by transit, though frequencies could be improved, especially on weekends. The stadium's land use is on the right track. Over the last several years, there has been a gradual infill development of mixed-use buildings, park spaces, and museums added to the area, giving it increasingly good year-round activation. If the stadium continues on this path of redevelopment on the remaining parking lots, the stadium could have top-tier urbanism. As is, the former Heinz Field earns a steel-clad A for its urbanism.
Let's go Broncos. Broncos, let's go!
Built in 2001, Mile High Stadium is the highest stadium in the NFL. So, how's its urbanism? The stadium is located across the South Platte River from downtown Denver in a residential neighborhood. It is bracketed on 2 sides by wide elevated highways and a wide arterial on its west side, which meet in a large interchange to the southwest. These force circuitous and unpleasant pathways for many pedestrians, harming walkability and somewhat isolating the stadium from its neighboring communities. The stadium sits in an ocean of parking, twice its size. It is set back at least 4 to 8 football fields from the nearest street, which can feel even further when combined with the wide open nature of the space. To counter this, the designers installed pedestrian plazas and walkways which use clever design elements to draw people towards the stadium. These are effective, especially with lots of people, but the lack of year-round spatial activation means that unless there is a game or event, few, if any, people will be in these plazas. This flips the elements on their head, making them feel isolating and off-putting. The stadium is well served by transit, at least on paper. It is within a half-mile walk of 2 light rail stations, 6 local bus routes, and 2 intercity buses. These routes offer good frequencies and coverage across the region. However, what should be excellent transit service is critically undermined by the complicated and indirect, off-putting pathways which people must follow to go from the stations and stops to the stadium. Though on game days the sheer size of the crowds can mitigate these issues, the lack of other land uses means that these crowds will only exist a few days a year. Most of these issues can be solved with a few critical investments. These include changing the nearby highway interchange to a roundabout and pursuing an aggressive strategy of infill mixed-use development in the parking lots. This will better connect the stadium and surrounding neighborhoods and add much-needed year-round activation to the area. Mile High Stadium merits a C for its urbanism. With the necessary investments, its urbanism could soar to match its namesake. Built in 2002, Ford Field is one of the only NFL stadiums with its end zones oriented east-west rather than north-south. So, how's its urbanism? The stadium is in the heart of downtown Detroit, which has excellent walkability foundations, but both the stadium and downtown are somewhat cut off from the rest of the city and region by a ring highway which hinders wider walkability. Though the stadium is within 15 minutes of the local transit hub, most fans taking transit to the game make use of the 3 local and 3 regional bus lines which directly serve the stadium, as well as the Q Line streetcar for 1 or 4 p.m. Sunday games. The stadium is thus decently served by transit, but this would be improved with higher frequencies at a minimum and wider regional transit upgrades at max. The land use around the stadium is okay, with a baseball stadium, cultural spaces, parks, mixed-use apartment buildings, and more, but there are also significant amounts of surface parking. The stadium and city have immense potential, especially if it caps the highway to restore the historic street grid, which is already being examined, pursues infill development, improves existing transit with higher frequencies and dedicated lanes, and builds better regional options like BRT, light rail, or an ambitious proper metro system. Ford Field receives a B+ for its urbanism. The stadium and city can go far if it can get the motor humming.
What are you thinking?
Built in 2002, Gillette Stadium is home to the tallest lighthouse in the United States. So, how's its urbanism? The stadium is in Foxborough, Massachusetts, around 20 miles from Boston and Providence. Though towns dot the New England landscape, the stadium is isolated from all of them in a sea of parking and strip malls. It thus scores quite poorly on walkability. The stadium is served very infrequently on weekdays by train service to Boston and by event-specific train service to Boston and sometimes to Providence on weekends. Other than this though, the only way to reach the stadium is by driving. The land use of the stadium isn't much better. A few years after the stadium was built, some infill development was done, but all lost parking was replaced with even more spaces across the road. Further, the infill was a mix of low-rise hotels and strip malls. Though the inner street of this development appears to follow good rules of walkability, this faux urbanism only distracts from the inherently car-dependent nature of the space. It's better than a sea of asphalt, but not by much. If frequent and daily train, along with local and regional bus service, was to be run, and walkable mixed-use development were pursued, the site could be transformed into the core of one of the iconic rail towns which define New England's charm. As is though, Gillette Field receives a D+ for its urbanism. Much like the Pats, it needs a rebuild. Built in 2002, Lumen Field has fans so rowdy they've caused 3 small earthquakes. So, how's its urbanism? The stadium is located at the edge of the Soto neighborhood in the heart of downtown Seattle. This space is extremely walkable to the north and east, but is noticeably less walkable to the south, where stroads and highways dominate. Lumen Field sits adjacent to the hub of the current and planned regional and interregional transit system. It is thus well served by many buses, a streetcar, a growing number of light rail lines, regional trains, and even interstate Amtrak service. While frequency and efficiency could be improved on some of these lines, it is overall one of the best transit systems of any stadium in the NFL. The stadium has excellent land use. It has minimal surface parking around it, instead seeing many mixed-use buildings, parks, cultural spaces, and even another stadium. This provides great year-round activation around the stadium, though some gaps do remain. Improvements could be made by turning the remaining parking lot into a plaza, which could be converted between tailgate parking on game days and public space the other 355 days of the year, something that we would recommend for a lot of other stadiums across the NFL. Further, some capping, additional pedestrian bridges, and infill development could further boost the urbanism. The southern side is the greatest challenge and will require extensive land use changes and rethinking of the streetscape. Lumen Field receives a soaring A for its urbanism, falling just short of an A+. We hope to be able to boost this grade one day soon. Built in 2002, NRG Stadium is home to the youngest team in the NFL. So, how's its urbanism? The stadium is located several miles from downtown Houston, amid largely car-oriented sprawl. Sitting in an ocean of parking and wide stroads, it scores very poorly on walkability. Its land use is also poor. The parking lots around it are large enough to fit the stadium almost 12.5 times over. The adjacent Astrodome has been closed since 2009, and the two nearby event venues are not a dependable source of activation. Neighboring developments are similarly car-oriented and inwards-facing, doing little to boost the urbanism score. The stadium's transit is its strongest asset. It is well served by the frequent light rail Metro Rail Red Line, with trains every 5 to 12 minutes. It's also served by two not very frequent bus lines. The biggest gap, though, is a lack of effective regional transit. Improvements could be made by pursuing aggressive infill development and redevelopment, and an expansion of Houston's light rail network and a renewed investment in its bus system. This strategy should be repeated across the city, as many of NRG's problems are emblematic of those found all over Houston. NRG Stadium gets a weak C- for its urbanism.
That's how you do it.
Built in 2003, Lincoln Financial Field, or the Link to locals, supposedly resembles an eagle from above. So, how's its urbanism? The stadium is at the southern tip of Philly, in the sports complex, along with two other stadiums. Though the I-76 highway does split this area from the rest of the city, the foundations of walkability in the area remain surprisingly strong. The Link is well served by transit. Several bus lines and the terminus of the Broad Street subway line put frequent and efficient transits just about anywhere in the city or region at fans' fingertips thanks to SEPTA's comprehensive network. The sports complex's land uses are what hurt it most. Apart from the stadiums, a casino, a glorified sports bar, and an adjacent industrial and logistical district, the rest of the area is pure parking lot. However, 3 stadiums, all in the same place, help to cushion this blow, as the overlapping seasons of the 4 sports create a consistent, if low, baseline activation year-round. With a few strategic changes, the stadium and the complex could be a model district for cities around the nation. These include burying I-76, reconnecting the street grid, and pursuing infill mixed-use development on the parking lots. The Link gets a B- for its urbanism. Like most things in Philly, it has strong bones, but dearly needs some meat on them. Go Birds.
Oh my God, it's like standing on the sun! This city should not exist. It is a monument to man's arrogance.
Built in 2006, State Farm Stadium is one of 2 stadiums in the NFL with a retractable field. So, how's its urbanism? The stadium is located in Glendale, amidst the sprawl of the greater Phoenix area. Surrounded by stroads, a highway, parking lots, and car-centric malls, its walkability is awful. Its transit options are just as bad. The only transit serving the stadium, which is in a metro area with a population of close to 5 million people, is a single, very infrequent bus route that stops half a mile away from the stadium. It fares no better on land use. The stadium is surrounded by a parking ocean 6.5 times its size. Across Maryland Avenue is the Westgate development, home to hotels, low-rise apartments, an arena, and shopping malls, all with their own lakes of parking, isolating them and further forcing car dependence. Though ordinarily we would suggest changes at the existing site to improve the urbanism, such as infill development on the parking lots, any changes in this case would, in our view, only further exacerbate Phoenix's sprawl. We would instead recommend that the stadium be rebuilt closer to the center of the metro area, near a current or future light rail line, as part of a stadium district TOD, which ideally would better align with the area's climate. State Farm Stadium gets a massive F for its urbanism. It needs a complete rebuild. Built in 2008, Lucas Oil Stadium was designed to look like a historic Indiana field house. So, how's its urbanism? The stadium is in the heart of downtown Indianapolis. Its walkability is overall strong, with it being well connected to the city's street grid, despite Route I-70, part of the semicircular highway which cuts the downtown off from the rest of the region, being directly south and east of the stadium. An elevated railway main line to the north also creates something of a barrier, but this is reduced by the Indianapolis Skywalk, a series of elevated enclosed corridors which connect many of the downtown's major destinations. The Skywalk network is expected to expand over the next few years, adding to the connectivity it creates. The stadium is also connected to the Indianapolis Cultural Trail, a downtown connector system of walking and cycling paths with the new extension over the river opening soon. The stadium has great transit service. Though only one infrequent bus route directly serves the stadium, it is within a 15-minute walk of the hub of the Indigome transit system, and is less than 10 minutes away from the State House station for the existing red and purple BRT lines and the future blue line. Though frequencies and coverage in the suburbs could be improved, this still represents a solid transit foundation. The land use around the stadium is where it is found lacking. Though it doesn't have a sea of parking around it, the rest of the area is severely underutilized. It has some hotels, industrial spaces, several parking lakes, and a plethora of vacant land. There are plans to change this, however. Improvements could be made with a few key changes. Burying I-70 and reconnecting the historic street grid would improve walkability. This is being explored by the Rethink 6570 Coalition and INDOT. Improving lighting, art, businesses, and activation of the railway would also help boost walkability, and this is being explored by the city. Infill development and redevelopment of the land around the stadium is underway, with the Elanco Global HQ mixed-use area, ongoing infill development along South Meridian Street, and other projects leading the way. Transit could be improved by increasing frequencies on bus lines and expanding suburban service, and by creating a far-reaching regional rail service. Overall, Lucas Oil Stadium gets a strong B- for its urbanism. With all the projects being done or planned in the area, we expect this grade will rapidly improve over the next few years.
Yeah, here we go!
Built in 2009, AT&T Stadium is the third largest stadium in the NFL. So, how's its urbanism? The stadium is in Arlington, Texas, in the overlapping sprawl of Dallas and Fort Worth. It is surrounded by stroads and car-oriented suburbia, so it scores very poorly on walkability. The stadium has zero real transit. The closest it gets is a glorified rideshare system and hotel shuttle bus service. These are not public transportation, and thus the stadium fails completely in this regard. The stadium does not sit in a parking ocean. Instead, it has its parking spread out over several lots in the area, which makes the poor walkability even more glaring. Every structure in the area also has its own parking light or on-site parking, signaling the expectation that people will drive everywhere. From transportation to land use, it's a classic case of forced car dependence. The urbanism of the stadium could be improved by adding transit options such as local bus and BRT, and by adding a cross-region light rail line. Further improvements could be made by tweaking the land use laws and pursuing infill development to increase walkability through better land use and street-level activation. This would need to be part of a broader effort to fix the wider, fundamental issues with car-oriented sprawl which dominate the region. AT&T Stadium gets a Texas-sized F for its urbanism. Them boys need a rebuild both on and around the field. Built in 2010, MetLife Stadium is the largest stadium in the NFL. So, how's its urbanism? Though it hosts 2 New York City teams, the stadium is in neither the city nor the state of New York. Instead, it's across the Hudson River in Jersey, in the Meadowlands. Isolated from its surroundings by highways and swamps, it scores horribly on walkability. Its land use isn't much better. The stadium sits in a sea of parking 9 to 14 times its size. Across the highway is the American Dream shopping mall, but the mall feels very separate from the stadium. The 2 spaces are only connected by a pedestrian bridge, which the stadium uses to access the mall's parking lots. As such, the mall does little to provide additional year-round activation for the stadium area. Similarly, the adjoining racetrack has no real connection to the stadium area, with the track facilities being so separate, one can't even walk from the track to the stadium. The stadium's transportation is what saves it from failure. It is served by an event-specific train line and event bus route. In addition, there are a few regular buses serving the stadium daily, though these are extremely infrequent. The mall across the highway is also accessible by several bus routes, but this has limited benefit for the stadium due to how separated the spaces are. The best way to fix MetLife's urbanism would be to relocate it back to New York City. There is sufficient space on the site of the old Shea Stadium on Willets Point, which is in the midst of a bold redevelopment plan and is already very transit accessible to the entire region. Alternatively, considering existing interest in the site, the stadium could be relocated to Ditmars Steinway in Astoria. Either option would easily earn the stadium an A for its urbanism. As is though, MetLife, the stadium for the largest city in the country, gets only a weak D- for its urbanism.
Wow, San Francisco.
Built in 2014, Levi's Stadium's height is FAA restricted due to it being in the flight path of the nearby airport. So, how's its urbanism? The stadium is not located in San Francisco, but at the southern end of the Bay Area in Santa Clara. Its walkability leaves something to be desired due to a lack of pedestrian connections to some adjoining neighborhoods and some issues with land use. However, the stadium's bikeability is solid due to its connections with several far-reaching multi-use urban trails and the presence of bike lanes on adjacent streets, though these do lack physical protection. Its transportation is overall good. The stadium is directly adjacent to 2 light rail lines, connecting the stadium to BART and Caltrain with minimal acceptable frequency. The stadium is also in walking distance to 2 regional rail lines. These regional trains are largely geared towards weekday commuters and have very low frequencies, but both offer special event service, providing a critical transit link as far away as Sacramento. Though frequencies and speeds could be improved, this creates the basis for solid regional transit access. The stadium's land use keep it from top marks. The stadium shares a parking lot with the nearby Great America theme park. Though this helps utilize the parking year-round, this is not how you want to plan a multimodal city. Further, this arrangement might be sunsetting in the next decade, with the park's new owners indicating a desire to close and redevelop it. Nearby is a second parking lot, which is large enough to fit the stadium twice over. Further, almost every building in the area has its own lake of parking. This makes the area less walkable and enforces car dependence. Improvements could be made by increasing transit frequencies, adding proper physical protection to the bike lanes, creating paths to the adjoining neighborhoods, and pursuing infill development on the site of the theme park, the parking lots, and the vacant former golf course. This would make the stadium the heart of a thriving town center and help alleviate some of the regional housing shortage. As is, Levi's Stadium gets a B- for its urbanism. It could be sitting on a gold mine, if only it can cash in. Built in 2016, US Bank Stadium is meant to resemble the ice formations which form on St. Anthony Falls in winter. So, how's its urbanism? The stadium is in the heart of downtown Minneapolis. It has great walkability as it's well connected both to the city street grid and to the Minneapolis Skyway, a network of enclosed elevated pathways which connect most of the downtown, keeping the area walkable, even in bitter winters. Many of the streets in the area also have bike lanes, though these lack physical protection. A large highway ring road somewhat cuts the downtown off from the rest of the city and region. Though some pedestrian and transit links do help to mitigate this in places, the highway does negatively impact the stadium's grade. The stadium's transit is top-notch. It is directly served by 2 light rail lines and is within easy reach of 2 BRT lines and several bus routes. Though frequencies could be improved, this is still solid regional transit. The land use around the stadium is excellent. Rather than a sea of parking, the area is dominated by parks and mixed-use buildings. This is partially due to the stadium, as its building was paired with an infill development agenda. Despite the lack of large parking lots, the Vikings still have a very strong tailgate culture. If the stadium and city want to earn top marks, they need to cap or bury the highways, increase some transit frequencies, and add physical protection for the bike lanes. US Bank Stadium falls just short of an A+, earning a very strong A for its urbanism. Onwards to Valhalla!
You see, contraception is incredibly important, especially when you don't want your future son to cost you $100,000!
Built in 2017, Mercedes-Benz Stadium is the only NFL stadium with a retractable Oculus roof. So, how's its urbanism? The stadium is located close to downtown Atlanta. Though high traffic on the adjacent North Side Drive does hurt walkability, a pedestrian bridge does help to mitigate this. Protected bikeways on either side of the stadium should be connected in coming years, boosting bikeability. The stadium's transit is solid. It's accessible by 2 metro lines, with decent frequencies which are increased for events, as well as by 2 low-frequency bus lines. The stadium is not surrounded by an ocean of parking, though a large site of public housing was turned into a grassy parking lot in 2017. To the north is a massive convention center, which has low spatial activation without an event. To the west is Vine City, a lower income neighborhood which needs reinvestment. To the south is Clark Atlanta University, a local HCBU. To the east is Centennial Yards, a series of parking lots which are being redeveloped into a mixed-use district. Overall, this is decent land use, with room for further improvement. The stadium's urbanism could be enhanced by increasing transit frequencies, expanding the bike network, calming traffic on North Side Drive, and pursuing infill development on some of the remaining lots around the stadium. Mercedes-Benz Stadium gets an A- for its urbanism, but is well on its way towards an A. Won't be long before it's as pretty as a peach. Built in 2020, Allegiant Stadium is sometimes referred to as the Roomba for obvious reasons. So, how's its urbanism? The stadium is located in a logistics district near the airport. A massive highway separates it from the Vegas Strip, which, combined with narrow sidewalks, poor land use, and overly wide roads, creates a very unwalkable space. To the city's credit, they do close the bridge across the highway to vehicle traffic for games, which creates a relatively walkable corridor to the Strip, but this is the exception, not the rule. The stadium is poorly served by transit. One infrequent bus comes close to the stadium, but there is a more frequent bus a few blocks north. However, the poor walkability makes blocks feel like miles. Similarly, there is a minimally frequent bus on the Strip, but this is only accessible when the road is closed for games due to the otherwise poor walkability. Shuttle buses do connect many of the city's hotels and resorts to the stadium for events, but this serves tourists more than locals. There are plans to eventually extend the Vegas Loop down to the stadium, but, and we cannot emphasize this enough, this is not transit! The land use around the stadium is bleak. The stadium has a sizable parking ocean around it, and beyond them are warehouses and roads with the odd hotel or strip mall. The entire area, including the strip across the highway, is car-oriented. Fixing the stadium's urbanism would require a systemic overhaul citywide. The monorail system could be extended down to the stadium as part of a wider regional transit plan. The sidewalks should be widened and trees planted or shading added. The strip could be modified to include more public spaces, and the area could shift towards more mixed-use development. These are steps needed across the whole of Sin City. Allegiant Stadium folds and gets a big F for its urbanism.
What a sprawling and ongoing situation this is.
Built in 2020, SoFi Stadium, with a $5.5 billion price tag, is the most expensive stadium in the world. So, how's its urbanism? The stadium is in the city of Inglewood, part of the greater sprawl which makes up Los Angeles County. Though it has the theoretical bones for good walkability, car-oriented land use and overly wide stroads greatly undermine this. Lacking any bicycle infrastructure beyond a few hundred feet of painted-on bike lanes, the stadium completely fails on bikeability. The transit of the LA region is complicated. The stadium is served by 6 bus lines, plus 3 special game day shuttles from 5 different agencies. Several of these lines do not operate on weekends, and those that do run daily have frequencies which range from 5 to 2 times per hour. Despite stadiums being ideal for high-capacity transit, this stadium's only connection to LA's metro system is a shuttle to the Hawthorne Lenox station. This all amounts to mediocre service for an urban area with 18.5 million people. The stadium's land use is interesting. While presently the stadium is in an ocean of parking almost 4 times its size, the long-term plan is to develop these lots piece by piece into a vibrant mixed-use neighborhood called Hollywood Park. This could create an excellent stadium district, but it is unclear if this long-term plan will ever be completed. Further, even if it is, there are still numerous issues with car-centric land use in the surrounding areas. For SoFi to improve its urbanism, it would need to complete the Hollywood Park plan, add bike lanes to the streets and roads, build out proper high-capacity transit to service the stadium area, increase frequencies on existing services and add dedicated transit lanes, and loosen the zoning laws to allow for more diverse land uses across the region. SoFi Stadium gets a D+ for its urbanism. The City of Angels has a long way to go to reach heaven.
Oh, hell no!
Set to open in 2026, the new Highmark Stadium will replace the adjacent, supposedly cursed, stadium of the same name. As such, they can be evaluated as if they were the same venue. So, how's its urbanism? The stadium is located far from downtown Buffalo in Orchard Park. Wide roads and narrow sidewalks, as well as the stadium's physical location, means that it scores extremely poorly on walkability. Though the city of Buffalo has some decent transit, the stadiums don't have access to it. One infrequent bus comes within a quarter mile of the stadium, showing that transit is an afterthought for stadium access. The land use is abysmal. The current stadium is in a parking ocean 5.5 times its size. The plan is that once the new stadium, which is being built in one of the parking lots across from the existing facility, is completed, the old Highmark will be demolished and replaced with parking. In fact, the total amount of parking might increase. This is car-centric land use planning at its worst. The best way to improve the stadium's urbanism would have been to have located somewhere else entirely. Ideally, this would have been closer to downtown Buffalo, along the existing light rail subway line, or in a location where the train could be logically extended to, with opportunities for redevelopment around the stadium. Instead, the new Highmark doubles down on all the planning mistakes of the existing stadium, with both getting a big, icy F for their urbanism. When we started the NFL Urbanism series, we expected to see a lot of stadiums like Arrowhead, large stadiums in the middle of nowhere and oceans of parking with little to no transit links. We also assumed that American football stadiums would be extremely difficult to have good urbanism built around them due to the limited play schedule compared with other sports. We are pleased to say that many of our assumptions were proven to be incorrect. Of the 30 stadiums in the NFL, only 5 received a failing grade. 4 more would have failed if not for the presence of rail transit links or good land use plans, and thus received Ds. 9 stadiums received solid A's for their urbanism, with good transit, land use, location, and walkability, though none reached the top marks of an A+. 6 stadiums received varying degrees of B's, with a few critical improvements in land use and/or transit standing between them and A-tier ranking. 6 stadiums were squarely in the middle, with movement possible in either direction depending on how their cities address land use and transit planning going forward. This means that the average grade for the NFL's urbanism is around a C+. Having gone through every stadium in the NFL, we have actually come to see that the limited schedule makes a mixed-use neighborhood around the stadium all the more important. Sprawling acres of surface parking doesn't generate value, house people, or foster a sense of community, especially when sitting empty for around 350 days a year. We aren't against providing parking. What we are against is sprawling acres of surface parking. We recommend taking the massive parking lots around the stadiums and redeveloping them into mixed-use communities. Parking could be moved into garages either below ground or in above-ground structures. Having a vibrant mixed-use neighborhood around the stadium means that the area is contributing to the region's economy and culture year-round, further generating more value from the same land. Similarly, forcing tens of thousands of people to drive to games does little more than create massive traffic jams before and after games. By giving fans alternatives to driving, this gives people the option to skip traffic, lessening the intensity and duration of the traffic for those who still choose to drive. Stadiums, much like the teams which play in them, can be unifying forces which create and maintain communities, all while generating vast amounts of wealth for both themselves and the city. All over the world and throughout history, this has been true of people-oriented stadium districts. It's clear that on some level, at least 9 teams in the NFL understand this, with more looking to join their ranks. Were we too generous or too harsh on any stadium? What do you think your local stadium could do better? Are there any other stadiums you'd like us to take a look at? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.